So now let us move to the next part of the numericals, that is multiple answer question type. Moving to the 14th question, when light is reflected from a mirror. So whenever light comes out is reflected from a mirror. So let us suppose this as a mirror. Okay. Let this be the normal drawn to the mirror, and here is an incident light ray, whereas this is a reflected light ray. Okay, so this is your incident light ray and here is your reflected light ray. Incident ray, reflected ray, normal drawn to the mirror. So whenever light is reflected from the mirror, so what changes do we observe? Obviously, its angle changes, its phase changes, because this was in one direction, this is in another direction. So of course, whenever direction changes, we can say that the phase changes. Okay. So as you have studied in the wave motion, okay, so upside, downside, so hence the thing over here. Okay. So whenever this is an incident ray and this is a reflected ray, whenever a light ray is reflected from a mirror, its phase changes. Its frequency, that means the number of vibrations per second, always remains constant. So no changes in frequency are being observed, and hence no change in wavelength. Okay. So this remains constant, whereas the wavelength also remains constant. But whenever a light ray is incident on any surface, a part of it is slightly absorbed and the remaining part is reflected, as we have studied in the beginning of this topic. Okay. That means as some amount of incident light ray is absorbed by the surface, no doubt intensity of light is decreased, intensity of light is reduced when it is reflected back into the same medium. So slight change in intensity is being observed. Hence, we have multi-correct answer type questions are there. So in this we observed that whenever a light is reflected from a mirror, so two changes we observe generally. No doubt one is the change in phase and another is slight variation in its intensity. Hence, the correct options are option 1 and option 4. Okay. Well, moving to the next question, 15th one. Which of the following are the examples of irregular reflection? So, the previous concept we have discussed that irregular reflections always occurs whenever a light ray is incident on a rough surface, we observe a part irregular reflections are being observed. Okay. So this is your incident light rays and here is your reflected light rays. So the light rays scatters in all possible directions. So different directions. The light is scattered after reflection, it is scattered in different directions. Okay. This happens on the case of a rough surface, which is not highly polished. Smooth surface means highly polished. Not smooth, rough surface means not highly not polished to the well. Examples for that we have considered it as wall, wood, movie screen, and these are all the examples of your irregular surfaces. So, which of the following are the examples of the irregular reflection? Of course, wall, wood, ground glass. Ground glass is something like which is rough. If you touch the glass, you feel little roughness in that. So that type of glasses are called as a ground glass. So obviously it's not highly polished, hence ground glass will also gives your irregular refraction. But whereas coming to the plane surfaces, the plane mirror, it is a highly polished and smooth surface. So this will give you regular refraction, whereas the wall, wood and ground glass gives us irregular reflections. Hence the correct options here are option 1, 2, 4 goes with the answer. Okay. Well, moving to the next question, that is question number 16. So first one. For 16th one, if the angle between the mirror and the incident ray is 60 degrees, what is given, children? Angle between the mirror and the incident ray is given to be 60 degrees. Then you are asked to find out yes. So, if the angle between the mirror and incident ray is 60 degrees, then the angle of incidence is, so in order to solve this, let us first of all picturize the given concept. So, here we go. Let us take a mirror. Let a normal be drawn to this mirror, and this might be some incident ray, and here we go with a reflected ray on a plane surface. So this is your incident ray, this is your reflected ray, and here is your normal drawn to the surface. The angle between the mirror and the incident ray, this is your mirror. Let me name the mirror as M1. Between the mirror and the incident ray, the angle that we describe will be something here. And this angle they have given it as 60 degrees. This is the only condition they have given us. So, you are asked to find out the angle of incidence, angle of reflection, as well as the angle between the incident ray and reflected ray. So, let us try to solve this. Children, as we know that this is the normal drawn to the plane surface and this is the surface of the mirror, the angle between these two must be equals to 90 degrees. This part is known. If the total angle is 90 degrees and this part is 60 degrees, what must be the remaining part? It must be 90 minus 60. Okay. So, that must be 90 minus 60. So, what is the value of 90 minus 60? The value must be 30 degrees. So, if the given value, if they have given us that the angle between the mirror and the incident ray is 60 degrees, then the angle between the incident ray and normal will be 30 degrees. That means angle of incidence is 30 degrees. If angle of incidence happens to be 30 degrees, then as we know that angle I must be equals to angle R. If this happens to be 30 degrees, this must also be equals to 30 degrees. So, the angle between the normal and the reflected ray is also 30 degrees. Okay, that's it. So, let us check it out, the options from the given question. First one, the angle of incidence is, what is the angle of incidence? This is your angle of incidence. So, how much is the angle of incidence? This value. This angle itself is called as angle of incidence, and that is equals to 30 degrees. Of course, it is true. And the angle of reflection, and we know that the angle of reflection and angle of incidence both are equal. From the laws of reflection, we studied that the angle of incidence is always equals to the angle of reflection. If this happens to be 30 degrees, this must also be 30 degrees. So, the angle of reflection is also found to be 30 degrees. Moving to the angle of reflection. So, some small correction I have made, children. Earlier it was given as 30, but the actual it should be 60 degrees. So, in the second question, they gave the angle of reflection as 30 degrees. In the third part, they gave the angle of reflection is 60 degrees. So, angle of reflection just now we found it as 30 degrees. So, hence it cannot be 60 degrees. So, option third must be false. And finally, they also are asking the angle between the incident ray and reflected ray. This is your incident ray and here is your reflected ray. So, the total angle they are asking us. So, what is the total angle, children? The total angle must be, yes, color. From here to here, the total angle is 30 plus 30. It is found to be 60 degrees and hence fourth option is also true. Hence, we observed 3 correct options. What were they? First option, second option and fourth option are found to be true. Okay. So, well, now moving to the next one. Reasoning type questions, so assertion reasoning model questions. You should also be clear with that. Generally, they will be asking in the NEET and advanced level questions. Okay, let us see. So, statement A is given: regular reflection occurs when a beam of light falls on a smooth and polished surface. That is what we have discussed. Whenever a light ray falls on a smooth and polished surface, regular reflection occurs, isn't it? So, whenever a light ray falls on a smooth and polished surface, regular reflection occurs. Yes, the statement is true. Now, let us move to the second part, statement B. The statement B says that irregular reflection occurs on when a beam of light falls on a rough surface. So, whenever a beam of light falls on a rough surface, then what happens? Irregular reflection takes place. Yes, that is also true. So, even statement A is true and statement B is also true. So, these are the 2 different statements. Okay. So, we observe that both statement A and statement B is true. Okay. Now, in the options they were asking us, statement 1 is true and statement 2 is true. Yes, of course. And statement 2 is the correct explanation of statement 1. How is that possible? This is a different statement and this is a different statement. This does not explain this. There are 2 different statements, but it does not mean that statement B explains statement A is a contradictory. So, this statement must be false because 2 does not explain the statement 1. Only thing is that statement 1 is true and statement 2 is true, but 2 does not explain the statement 1. So, let us try to go with the second statement. What is given? Statement 1 is true, statement 2 is also true and statement 2 is not the correct explanation of statement 1. Yes, this is what we have observed. So, first one is false and second one is obviously it is true. Okay. So, let us not count this. So, in this question, so statement 1 is true, statement 2 is true and we also observed that statement 2 is not the correct explanation of statement 1. And third, it was given that statement 1 is true and statement 2 is false. No. Statement 1 is false and statement 2 is true. It's also no. Okay. Hence, the only correct option from the given data is observed to be second condition, that is statement 1 is true, statement 2 is also true, but statement 2 does not explain the statement 1. Okay. So, second one is the correct one. So, moving to the 18th question, this is also statement based problems. Statement 1 says that for a plane mirror, what is that given? For a plane mirror, the ratio of incident angle to that of the reflected angle is 1. So, what is given, children? It was given that the ratio of angle of incidence to the angle of reflection is 1. So, what is that? We know that angle I is equals to angle R. So, when these two are equal, we can replace one with the other. Okay. So, IR can also be replaced with I. So, what is that equals to? 1 upon 1. Okay. So, for a plane mirror, the ratio of incident angle to the reflected angle is, because the values are same, we will be getting it as 1 upon 1 or simply 1. So, first statement is true. Well, and statement 2, it says that for a plane mirror, angle of incidence is equals to angle of reflection. Yes, this is also true. Because this statement is true, we have solved that the ratio of angle of incidence to the angle of reflection is 1. Okay, by taking the second statement into consideration only, we are able to solve for the first statement. Okay, hence statement 1 is true, statement 2 is also true, and it is very clear that from the given data, statement 2 clearly explains the statement 1. So, is the correct, 2 gives the correct explanation of statement 1. 1 is true, 2 is true, and gives the correct explanation of statement 1. Hence, no other possibilities, statement first option is absolutely true. So, no need to discuss with the other conditions. So, your answer is statement 1 is first option must be true. Here goes your answer. Well, now let us move to the paragraph based questions. So, what is the paragraph? The first they will be giving you a paragraph model, and based on that some few questions will be asked. So, moving ahead with the first question, a light ray is incident on a plane mirror. What is given? A light ray is incident on a plane mirror making an angle of 30 degrees with respect to the surface. So, this is the surface they have given us. Sorry, a surface was given, and what else was given? A light ray is incident on the plane mirror. First of all, let us try to plot the normal to this. Now moving to the incident ray and hence the reflected ray. So, based on this, IR, RR, normal to the mirror, M1. So, what is the angle of incident on a plane mirror? Making an angle of 30 degrees. So, how much angle is it making? It was given as 30 degrees with respect to the surface of the mirror. So, making an angle 30 degrees with respect to the surface of the mirror, this light ray is making an angle 30 degrees. That is what it was given. Only one condition they have given in the question. Okay. So, based on that, few questions were asked. First question, the angle of incidence is, so children, in this, which one you tell it as an angle of incidence? The angle between the incident ray and the normal drawn to the surface itself is called as your angle of incidence. And how much is that? The total must be equals to 90 degrees. The total must be equals to 90 degrees. This portion they gave it as 30 degrees. Hence, the remaining portion must be equals to 90 minus 30, which is equals to 60 degrees. Angle I is equals to 90 minus 30, found to be 60 degrees. Hence, the angle of incidence is found to be 60 degrees. Clear? Well, now to the next question, the angle of reflection is. So, just now we have calculated the angle of incidence. So, the other power portion of this must be angle of reflection. The angle made by the reflected ray with normal drawn to the surface itself is called as your angle of reflection. But we know that the angle of incidence must be equals to angle of reflection. Just now we have calculated the angle of incidence as 60 degrees. If angle of incidence is 60 degrees, then angle of reflection must also be equals to 60 degrees from laws of reflection. Okay. Hence, the correct option must be option 1, that is 60 degrees. Over. Well, moving ahead with the next one, 21st question, angle between incident ray and reflected ray is. So, incident and reflected ray. So, just let us identify again once again, children. So, where is the incident ray? This is your incident ray and here goes your reflected ray. Okay, so you're asked to find out the total angle between the incident ray, this one, and the reflected ray, this one. Okay, so this total angle they are asking for. What is this total angle? Equals this portion you found it as 60 degrees and the remaining portion also you found it as 60 degrees. Then what is the total angle? The total angle must be equals to angle of incidence plus angle of reflection, that is equals to 60 plus 60 equals to 120 degrees. Over? Yes, hence the correct option must be option 4, that is 120 degrees. Is that okay, children? Well, so this is how we will be solving with the paragraph model question. Somewhere paragraph is given, based on that few questions will be asked. So moving to the next question number 22 regarding the matrix matching type questions. Okay, which you are already familiar with all these things. See here, in column 1 we have 4 options are given and you have to match with the column 2 of the remaining 4 options. So first, moving to the first question, that is regarding the regular reflection. Generally, where does we find the regular reflection? It generally happens on the smooth and highly polished surfaces like plane mirrors, regular reflections occurs. Whereas on the rough surface, which are not highly polished and which are rough, okay, while handling, they are generally, in that case, irregular refractions are being observed. Okay, well, so let us try to match the same. So given that regular reflection, where does the regular reflection happens? It's no way concerned with the angles. So polished and smooth surface. Here we go. So regular reflection generally takes place on polished and smooth surfaces, whereas irregular reflections takes place on rough surfaces. So for second one, option C must be true. So moving to the third one, angle of incidence. What is angle of incidence? We know that the angle made by the incident ray, the angle made by the incident ray with normal drawn to the surface itself is called as your angle of incidence. So this portion is called as your angle of incidence and this portion is generally termed as your angle of reflection. This is incident ray, this is normal drawn to the surface and here is your reflected ray. So angle of incidence is this value, that is the angle between the normal and the incident ray. The angle between the normal and the incident ray is called as your angle of incidence. So for option number 3, A must be true. Well, now moving to the last portion of that question, angle of reflection. What is angle of reflection? This portion itself is called as your angle of reflection. So that means the angle between the normal drawn to the surface and the reflected ray. This total value itself is called as your angle of reflection. So angle of reflection is the angle between the normal and the reflected ray. So clearly we identified from the above matching was that this first option goes with B, second one matches with C, third one matches with A and last fourth one matches with D. Hence B, C, A, D format is the correct approach. So with this we will conclude the worksheet 1 from the chapter 8 of Light of Concept 1. So children, keep practicing on and let us meet in the next applications in the next topics. Okay, until then, take care. Bye-bye.